Shalom, second time's a charm. This video is about explaining the political implications of what was going on during the War of 1812. And the reason I'm doing it is because I left it out of the video I did before on the national anthem, but it's all tied together. And I'm going to make it simple and easy for you to understand. So, if you were an American slave during the War of 1812, and there were, I'm not going to try to hide that, there were, England made an offer to you to fight against America. And if you did, if you joined England's Navy or Army, you would be given freedom if England won that war. And there were slaves in America at that time who took England up on that offer. 800 of them left from Chesapeake Bay, got on an English, British, same, those words are interchangeable, ship. And then after they did whatever service they did for the British Navy or Army, I don't know what those things were. I don't know if they were cooks or, orderlies or whatever. They were given land in Trinidad, 16 acres and freedom. Now, I don't have any, as a family, that was a pretty sweet offer. If you were a slave and you were told by the enemy of your country, which is a bigger, stronger, older country, that if you fight for us, England, and we win this war, you get to go free. That's a pretty good chance because England was a bigger, stronger, older country, had a great big navy, was a world power. And you're in America, which is a 40-year-old country that has an navy. And, everyone who's in the navy and everyone who's joining the army in America are just settlers, colonists, right? Just established. And so I'm taking that offer. You took a risk, but if you looked at it from an objective point of view, there was a pretty good chance England was going to win that war, and so you were going to be granted your freedom. And even though the British lost that war, those colonists, those slaves who were sent to Trinidad, got their freedom. So England made them free. I'll just say that. But they ran a risk. And anyone who's in this same situation, it could be Ukraine and Russia now, it could be China and Taiwan now. You run a risk because if you do that, if you join the enemies of your country is going to declare you a traitor. You have committed treason. And most countries, to their own citizens who do that, the punishment for being a traitor or committing treason is often death. It's often either a firing squad or hanging or whatever. And that's sort of essentially what happened to our early American patriot, Nathan Hale. He was a colonist in America before America became its own country. Everyone here is like a British colonist or a good amount of people, or, a French national trading or whatever. Nathan Hale spied, wrote documents against the English government and was caught, and that's why he was hanged. And so the whole thing going on with England making that offer, and I think they did it in the Revolutionary War too, the War of Independence, is politics. It's influence. Politics are influence. It's getting influence for your beliefs and eventually getting your beliefs into law. So it stays that way. That's why, abortion and pro-life people are still, trying to get these laws changed. And eventually the pro-life people in America finally got the Roe versus Wade law changed so that there is not federal protection for abortion. That doesn't mean abortion in America has been abolished. It means that each state now decides for itself whether they want to make abortion legal or not. And so people in politics, people in the news and the media who are putting out information and sometimes disinformation, like the whole thing about abortions being abolished in America, is disinformation. It's taking the truth of that matter and blowing it out of proportion, making it way more dramatic. So the reason I wanted to talk about the politics of what England was doing is they were definitely trying to influence our slaves, to get slaves in America to flee, which some did, and it was better for them. But it was also to cause consternation. It was to um, undermined the power, the authority in the country of America at the time. And it wasn't the only thing England did. And this is what happens during war. There's propaganda, there's messages put out there to get people fighting in the war excited about fighting for their side. And there's propaganda in there painting your enemy as bad, horrible people, whatever. Their religion is bad, or their social culture is bad, or you don't like their race, or whatever, in order to make people be willing to fight against each other. And so that's what England was doing in the War of 1812. And another thing they were doing, and something that caused the war, big part of it, was English Navy ships were press ganging American citizens into their Navy. And they didn't just do it to Americans. They did it to French and Spanish and all kinds of people all over the world. They were, their Navy was a very big power in those days. And they had, their ships going into ports all over the world. And the way they press ganged people often was their sailors would come to shore, go to a local pub, get people drunk, if it's a friendly port, get young guys drunk, telling them stories about how, wonderful the British Navy is and how the freedom of being a British sailor and so on. Once they were drunk, grabbing them and taking them back to the ship and leaving, the ship leaves port. Now you're on the ship. You can't swim back. It's too far. So now you're in the British Navy, whether you wanted to be or not. And they were doing that an inordinate amount to American citizens. And so our little new government had to make a decision. Are we as a country going to protect our citizens from this sort of thing? Or are we going to get ourselves together and declare war on England again? Because we beat them in the War of Independence. We got to beat them in this War of 1812. And so that is also background for the battle at Fort McHenry, where the national anthem was written. And that is some of the politics behind what was going on there. And there's one more little thing, if you don't mind hanging out with me just a little bit longer. The British Navy has a song. And if you're English and I've gotten this wrong and it's just a national song or whatever, you certainly correct me, called On Britannia. And the initial lines of it are, on Britannia, Britannia, England rules the waves. British citizens, British people will never, never be slaves. And so I think that's also part of where our national anthem talks about hirelings and slaves, in a fight, in a battle with us, will go down to the grave. Because I think that was a way of Americans to, do a to the British Navy. I really do. Okay, and so that's my whole explanation. Thank you for coming along on the journey with me. If you haven't watched the video on the national anthem, please do. And comment. I always like reading your comments. And I am out of here. Got to go do my chores. Bless you. Shalom.